As you heard me mention just a moment ago, this is the last week of 4 when we are looking in depth at the subject of joy, especially as seen in the small New Testament letter of Philippians, but also looping in a lot of the neurological and psychological research that's been done on the subject in the last 15 to 20 years. Let me start this last sermon on joy with a poem. This is from a poet named Lois Cheney, who was actually a lifelong Presbyterian in Ohio, taught at Bowling Green University, simply entitled Joy. Joy is an old-fashioned word. What did it used to mean? Something like happy, maybe? Could just anyone do it, or only a select and special few? I wish I knew what it used to mean, for I need a word, a good, solid word that shows how I feel when the day is over and I've worked well and I'm glad to be tired. I need a word for when I've spent hours and hours with those I love and my face aches from smiling and my throat is sore from laughing. I need a word for when I'm alone and in the embrace of that silence, the depths of my heart are warm, safe, and at peace. I need a word for when a challenge looms like a jagged mountain and I sense the divine call to climb it and I tingle in anticipation. I need a word real bad, and I think that word might be joy. Or maybe it's God. Then again, maybe they're the same word. For the first 3 weeks of this series, we've looked at a lot of the big themes about joy in this little New Testament letter of Philippians. Today, we're going to get down to brass tacks. We're going to talk about building a joy plan in your life and in mine. A reminder that in the Monday email that goes out to our church family tomorrow, you will get a summary of what you hear me say today. That way you don't have to remember it all. But also this week, because this is the last week of our series, Choose Joy, in the Thursday email, I'm going to give you a bunch of resources on joy, like documentaries, books, articles online, that if you want to explore this more, you can. So just anticipate that. And if you're not on our church email list, reach out to us. We would love for you to be on it. So let's start big picture. I've mentioned before that one of America's greatest researchers on joy is someone named Dr. Pamela King, who teaches at Fuller Seminary in Pasadena. Her research has shown that these up on the screen are the major components of a joyful life. Your individualized recipe may vary to one degree or another, but there's a decent chance that if your hope is to live a joyful life, then it is going to need to include these 5 things. You've seen this list once before. You need to be growing in authenticity. That is, feeling like you are your true self. You need to be living into your strengths. You need to be deepening the relationships that matter to you. You need to be contributing to the well-being of others, and you need to be aligned with your own core values. If you've been listening to the first 3 weeks of this series, reflect with me that this is precisely what you see going on in the person of Paul as he writes this little letter to the church in northern Greece in the city of Philippi. But let's hone down even more and focus on some specific actions or priorities that you can have or take that will help you ensure that you can live week to week in a joyful kind of way. The first pointer could simply be summarized as see the butterflies. Not a phrase original with me, by the way. See the butterflies. Have you ever noticed that when a long anticipated big joy happens in your life, it's euphoric for a while. But then inevitably, that happiness or euphoria dwindles or peters away over time. Both psychological and neurological research would say to you that no matter how big the joy is, even something as big as winning the lottery, give it enough time and you are going to regress back to whatever your pre-big joy norm was. A whole bunch of big joys, trying to string them together one after the other, simply is incapable of making you happy. It doesn't work that way. So that trip you hope to take, retirement that you're looking forward to, oh, Liza, I'm speaking to you for a sentence. The family you hope to see, the friendship you hope to rekindle, all these things are good things. All these things are big things. But those big joys are not going to be able to help you create a joyful life. Instead, you need to see the butterflies, which is to say, many small joys make you joyful, not a few big ones. Many small joys are what make you joyful, not a few big ones. Do you know what book in your Bible gets this maybe best of all? It's a book that might be low on the list of books in your Bible that you think of when you think of joy. It's Ecclesiastes. If you're familiar at all with Ecclesiastes, it's Solomon, King Solomon, late in his life, reflecting on all the ways that he spent his time and his energy and his wealth, and how so little of it in the end mattered. So little did any of it extend beyond his own pending death. No, he says over and over, the best you can do is to eat, drink, and be merry, because tomorrow you perish. Small joys. Those things often that we work hardest on, those things that culture tells us matter the most, are often the things that are the most perishable. They are the things that will not satisfy our soul. So instead, focus on the butterflies, the little things, the things that are so easy to miss or avoid in your day in, day out, week in, week out life. There's a pastor by the name of Nancy Collier, who's a therapist. She says it this way. If I can get my notes to unstick. Joy is the result of the choice to actively stop, even if just for a moment, and hold in our awareness the small and lovely things of life. The purposeful acknowledgement of joys are indeed joy itself. So much of you being able to live a joyful life begins with your awareness. Can you see the butterflies? And the more precise, the more detailed, the more minute your focus, the more joys you can see. My wife likes to tell the story that when we first, well, actually even before we met in graduate school, one of the things that caught her eye about me, other than my rugged handsomeness, of course, is that she would notice that when I walked across campus, I would pause by the rose garden and I would bend down and I would smell the roses. Now, what she didn't know at the time is that my mother loves roses, and my dad slaved away for decades to grow her the best roses possible. there in the high desert of Southern California. Stop. Smell the roses. See the butterflies. You're waiting for big joys to come and to make you joyful, but it's actually the little joys that do. Nancy Collier says you need to pay attention to two kinds of joys in your life, especially. Pay attention to the joys that are unexpected and the ones you aren't owed. And there's all kinds of things day in and day out that happen to you that are positive or delightful or charming, and you didn't expect them to happen, and you are not owed those things. The psalmist in the Old Testament will talk about the beauty of the heavens above, the sturdy strengths of the trees of Lebanon, the majesty of the tall mountains. None of those things we are owed, but we are blessed to see their beauty. What are the things in your life that you're taking for granted, that you just let slip right by you? The butterflies flying all around you, and you aren't taking the time to see. Much of your ability to live a joyful life is going to be dependent on whether or not you stop to see the butterflies. Nancy Collier goes on to say, by the way, you don't just need to stop and see them, then you need to verbalize the captured you. It is not enough to see it, say it to yourself. Fire off a text to your son or to your wife and say, oh man, I heard this song and it made my heart sing today. I got this little note of encouragement and it's just what I needed today. I had lunch at this new Mexican place and you would not believe how good the fajitas were today. Don't just let it happen, but say it. Nancy Collier goes on to say that what she likes to do is giggle when a little joy happens. There are some of you, if you would like to choose to giggle when little joys happen, I want to be there to see it. She also likes to dance with her daughter when little joys happen. Just to take a moment and make it concrete. Yes, God, I am paying attention to my life that is full of little joys like butterflies, and I am thankful for it. In a sense, really, the entire letter of Philippians in the New Testament, all 4 chapters, is Paul doing that. It's him giving voice or verbalizing all the things in his life that brings him joy, even as he sits in the city of Rome, imprisoned, potentially going to be executed in the next few weeks or months. Philippians is his way of doing that. By the way, it's also important to pay attention to the little joys of your past. Not just the little butterflies that fly all over your hours and days and weeks, but the ones that did. Take time in your spiritual and personal practice to remember joys and cherish them, because if you take time to remember past joys, you are increasing your capacity to experience more joy in the present. It's how your brain works. Neurons that fire together wire together. They stay together. Something that made you experience joy in the past will again, if you relive it in your mind, bring you joy in the present and increase your ability to perceive and have joy in the present moment. If you're like me, you take a lot of pictures on your phone and then you forget to delete them for years. Someday, when you're feeling low, slow, scroll back through all those pictures on your phone of those moments and those events and those people that brought you joy, and let it happen again. In my case, I'm on Facebook. And I've been on Facebook at my wife's insistence for now 15 to 20 years, which means I have pictures and stories about my kids from when they were tiny. And every day I look at my memories section to see the funny stories of my kids growing up because it brings me joy. And in that moment, when I read that post, I see that picture, I relive it, and it fills me yet again in the present day with joy. And it helps me go forward today and experience even more joy. So, bottom line, if you want to live a joyful life, stop thinking that the big moments of life are going to be the way that you get there. Instead, see the butterflies. I shared a practice with a friend of mine a couple of weeks ago. There's a particular verse in Philippians that, if you so choose, can help you do this. In Philippians chapter 4, verse 8, and actually a paragraph that's really all about joy if you go and read it, Paul says to the Philippians, "Finally, my beloved, whatever is true, honorable, just, pure, pleasing, commendable, and excellent or praiseworthy in any way, consider and dwell on these things." You can imagine as he was there under house arrest in Rome, worried about his own life, that what he did as part of his own spiritual practice was dwell on the kinds of things that he mentions in this verse. And he is advocating to these Christians in northern Greece to do the same. You have a choice about where you put your mind's attention. Where will it be? How about on honorable things? How about on commendable things? How about on just things? How about on pure things? Here's something you can do. It's something I started in my own life about a month ago. Put this verse somewhere on your laptop, on your phone, in a note, or maybe even in your own journal if you have one. And then periodically, at least once a week, make yourself read that verse and then create a list of all the things you have experienced in the last 24, 48 hours, the last 5 or 7 days that fit into those categories. See the butterflies of justice. See the butterflies of purity. See the butterflies of truth that have been fluttering around you in your life. Pay attention and see them because they're there. You have a choice about where your mind goes. Where will it be? One more quick pointer. There we go. You need to know what the warning signs of joylessness are in your life. Very much like there are probably physical health conditions as you age that your doctor advises you about, tells you to pay attention to. Yeah, you need to know what the warning signs or symptoms of joylessness are. This is as reported by, again, Nancy Collier. Pay attention to sarcasm. It is often the voice of joylessness. Pay attention to the way that you silently judge other people or shame them, especially the ones who are happier than you. Pay attention to being bitter, skeptical about new ideas, or pessimistic about other people, the present, or the future. And last, pay attention to what's rubbing off from you onto other people. Do you leave them more joyful when you're with them or not? These are the warning signs of joylessness. And you may have your own particular way of embodying joylessness based on your own personality, sure. But there's a decent chance this is what it looks like for you and me too. And here's the thing. If you're not sure if you're going through a bout or a season of joylessness, ask your spouse. Ask a close friend if that's what they're seeing and hearing and feeling from you. And I don't say that facetiously. We often understand ourselves least of all, and we need the help of others to perceive ourselves accurately and with acuity. Who are the people in your life that you trust enough to tell you when they feel like, yeah, you need to pay a little more attention to your joy? These are the warning signs of joylessness. There's more to say, of course, but let me end here. An Israeli psychologist sums up her study of joy simply by saying, joy is a verb. It is not a noun. Even though in the English language, by the way, for all of you who are languageophiles, actually it's the other way around. Joy is a verb, it's not a noun. Joy is something you do. It is not something you are, nor is it something you have. Joy is a... Thanks. I just want you to know, when I try to be funny, I don't get laughs like that. Hey, there's a butterfly. I'm taking that one home with me today. Joy is a conscious commitment. It is something you do choice by choice, day by day. You've heard me say before, Pamela King describes joy as a virtue. It is a character trait that you hone over your years. We can do no better as a congregation. You can do no better in your life as a Christian than what Paul says in these two verses we looked at in the first week of this series. We can do no better than, as he says in Philippians 3:1, than to remind each other periodically, even incessantly, that we are to be a people of joy. Philippians 4:4, that really what we're shooting for here is to rejoice together always, regardless of what it is that we may be experiencing now or what we have experienced yesterday. The goal is for life to be full of joy. In the Old Testament, Nehemiah says it this way to the children of Israel as they're returning from exile: may the joy of the Lord be your strength. My prayer for you and for our church is that joy would be our strength. As we have done the first 3 weeks of this series, we are going to use those paper flowers on the end of the pews today. And what I would like you to do as Tina plays for a moment or two is consider before God, what 1 or 2 specific steps do you feel like you need to take in your life to become more joyful? And then I will tell you what we're going to do with those flowers. If you've been here the first few weeks of the series, you know already. Take a minute. Tina, go ahead and play. Write at least one thing down on your flower, if you would. Okay. You will have till the end of the service to finish, so don't panic if you didn't think of something. That's all right. But we wanted to end the service today, and really this whole series, with an opportunity to share together. So there are 2 mics Susie Edged over here has one. Rachel Fisher over there has the other, and the mic will come to you. But what I would like to ask is if you would be willing to share just briefly a sentence or two, maybe something that was really helpful or meaningful to you from the whole series that you learned about joy. Or if you wish, you can tell us how you're going to go forward from here trying to live a more joyful life. Or if you'd like, you can offer up a sentence prayer for you or for us as we leave this series and try to move forward together in the joy of our Lord. If you're watching from home, you can participate in this. Just put whatever you'd like down in the YouTube chat, and we will be sure to read it for you. So, somebody raise your hand if you would and get us started. The first one's always the toughest, but anything up there on the screen, I would love for you to share with us. Go ahead.
Is it on? Oh. On the Sunday where we talked about who made us joyful, and there were just so many people to list that made me joyful. And when I got down to the fellowship hall, I saw and heard people all around the room going up to people and saying, I listed you because of this. I listed you because of this. And it was a wonderful time.
Oh, good. Good. What a good shared spiritual practice. Thank you, Mary. Somebody else?
Rachel, thank you. Well, what would I do but sing? The joy of the Lord is my strength, and conversely, the strength of the Lord is my joy.
Thank you, Jane. Someone else?
Last week, I wasn't paying attention to you during the service.
You weren't the only one. It's okay.
I don't remember what you said at the beginning, but it made my brain go down this. I thought you were going to tell us to think of people that made it. I don't know what I thought you were going to do. Anyways, I started thinking of this friend that I have had for a very long time and have reconnected with, but I wrote her a note and said, we're learning about joy, and you are the most joyful person I know, and this is why. And I left it in her mailbox on Monday morning, and that was a great surprise to her, and we talked about it. And so I would offer you, send a note to somebody.
Oh, that's fantastic.
We send texts and they disappear. We send emails and they get lost. There's just something about a piece of paper.
Yeah.
I know I'm getting old. But I am going to change my screensaver at work to the verse about joy that you had up earlier so that every time it refreshes on my computer, it makes me stop and think.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Someone else? Just raise your hand high. If you're a part of our church family, you know I'm not going to see it. We're going to have to trust everybody else to see it. All right, go ahead.
I just thought the whole thing, the whole series just kind of reminded me that joy has to be intentional. You have to stop and take time for it, allow time for it, because, we tend, at least I do, tend to run from one thing to the next thing to the next thing without really thinking beyond that.
Yeah, thank you, Rich. Yes, you speak for many of us in that. Anybody else? Thank you.
I'll just say, today, especially with the butterflies, I'm one that, I'm like, hey, squirrel, or hey, little bird, or I'm always talking to everything, but that's okay. Those are the little things that make me happy, and that's okay.
Right. Thank you, Susie. Maybe one more? I see Rachel on the move.
When people ask me how I am, I always have this silly little saying, and I always say, oh, I'm so happy I can't stand it. And truthfully, I really feel that way. There are sometimes I feel, why should I be so happy? But there's so many things to look at, even those small butterflies that make me happy. So sometimes I really do feel like that. I feel so happy that I just can't stand it.
Oh, thank you, Tony. All right, band, take the stage, if you would. And we're going to sing together one more time. So as they're taking the stage, congregation, stand if able, and we will sing together.